Good afternoon. This afternoon at the Intelligence Forum's Who Are You podcast, we're absolutely delighted to have Roger Neary, a member of the UK board and chief sales officer at DB Cargo. I would declare that normally we always say that Intelligence Forums is totally neutral. I have to declare bias. I've had a lifelong love of all things rail, and I should declare that before we start. So, Roger, absolutely delighted to have you here today. Thank you for the interview.
No, thank you, Harry. A pleasure to be here.
So, the first question I'd like to ask you today is, could you tell us about your professional journey to where you are now?
Yeah, of course, Harry. No problem. So, September, I actually celebrated my completion of 32 years service with DB Cargo and indeed its forefathers. So prior to DB, EWS, and prior to that, British Rail. I actually started my career in the depths of Warrington Arpley Marshalling Yard as a then tops clerk. Before moving over to Doncaster in the late 90s when the building I'm in now was first built. When I talk to my customers, I always say that my background is train planning, so that's really what I love to do, and indeed my role today is almost twofold in so much that I'm responsible for all DB Cargo UK's sales activities, but also all its train planning activities. So really, I take responsibility for what I call the front end before I go and hand that over to my colleagues in production to go and deliver for our customers. So my journey's been quite long. I've been extremely lucky. I've been able to experience lots and lots of different areas of the business. And indeed, I often say, apart from go out and drive a train, there's not really a lot I haven't done. So as I say, my background is very much train planning, sort of a part of the business that I thoroughly enjoyed. But back in 2005, I grabbed an opportunity to go and join the sales team, and really have been in that sales forum ever since. So I've had a number of account management roles, so being responsible for petroleum customers, aggregate customers, before moving on to a role of what we call head of sector, so where the account manager reports into to you. And my first role was actually, excuse me, head of coal. So back in 2009, when coal really had its major resurgence, and carried on in that role before actually being really fortunate enough to leave the UK business and go and work for the mother company, as it were, over in Mainz in Germany. So I spent 12 very happy months working for the sales team over in Germany before coming back to the UK and taking up a board position then as head of sales. And finally, sort of my last move was having the train planning function sort of bolted onto to my sales role, and I've been in my current role as chief sales officer now for a few years. So I think, in a nutshell, that's my journey over the past 32 years.
So when I'm on a train and I see one of your freights moving down the rails, you have these lovely Class 66 diesel locomotives, but of course that's going to change with climate issues. So tell us about how you're planning the locomotive. I know locomotives aren't your focus, but how are you as a business transitioning to the climate debate, and what is going to be pulling the trains of the future?
Well, that is a really interesting question, Harry, because as part of the backdrop of rail freight, our major competitor isn't actually other freight operating companies, is actually road. So we have to balance the cost effectiveness of our locomotive fleet with clearly the climate challenge. So for us at the moment, looking at the sustainability piece, and the fact that our Class 66s probably have around another 15 years working life in them, is to look at alternative fuels. And one of the fuels that we are using now with a number of customers is HVO, so hydrotreated vegetable oil. And the benefit of this really is, HVO has many benefits. That the main one is ultimately your carbon footprint. So the use of HVO leads to a reduction in carbon of about 90%, but it also has many other benefits, a reduction in nitrogen oxides, etc., etc. Now, we're not naive enough to think that that is the future. We simply treat it as what I call it, a transitional or a bridging fuel until we're absolutely sure what the future holds in terms of locomotive, because there are locomotives out there, bimode and trimode freight locomotives, but they are hugely expensive. And actually, if you think about the application to DB Cargo UK, they are somewhat limited, because we've got to remember that the UK rail network is only 38% electrified. And of that 38%, there's actually two types of electrification. And many of our customers' traffic doesn't run up north to south. It actually runs cross country, where many of the rail tracks are simply not electrified. So that is the conundrum. UK government does not, at this stage at least, have plans for mass electrification of the UK rail network, and the onus is very much on the freight operators to come up with their own solutions to actually fight climate change. So as I say, it's a balancing act. Sustainability clearly hugely important to us and indeed to our customers. But also the cost effectiveness of a new locomotive.
So, talking about the transportation of freights up and down the country, and then of course across the continent, how much of your freight does actually find its way going through the Channel Tunnel, or indeed onto cargo ships or from cargo ships?
Well, in terms of the Channel Tunnel, sadly, very little. The cost of using the Channel Tunnel is expensive. At times it can be, it can be a blocker to unlocking new rail freight routes. That said, some of the optimum use of the Channel Tunnel approved when rail freight isn't particularly good at this, but when you are loaded in both directions. So a huge success, something that DB Cargo developed with Group CAT and indeed Toyota a number of years ago, is a movement of finished vehicles from Kolín in the Czech Republic, connecting into Valenciennes in northern France, going to DB Cargo's facility at Toten, where Toyotas, so European-built Toyotas, are offloaded and taken to Burnaston, the UK factory, but then UK-built Toyotas are then transported back to the same hubs. So a really neat solution, and Toyota's view of that and how rail freight is very niche in their supply chain. Toyota describes it as greener, faster, safer. So that I think is a huge success. That said, just last week there was an announcement from Getlink. We've been doing work with Getlink to develop a new intermodal solution, really competing with Ro-Ro. So looking at semi-trailers coming in from Europe into the UK, but sadly that project is now paused, given given the effects of kind of the tariffs potentially imposed. So we'll just have to see where that goes, and hopefully lobbying to UK government may unlock that opportunity in the future.
So another question I'd like to ask you is, the future of the transportation of freight. I mean, how does that look as, through the lens you're looking at, and, when you're thinking stuff through, how do you see the future? I mean, that's a very broad question, and of course the responsibility shouldn't all be put on you, but you work in the industry, you're a professional, you've been in it for years, and you know your onions. So what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, I work in sales. I'm ever the optimist, but my thoughts are broadly positive. I think there are challenges, and we've discussed challenge of sustainability, but equally, I think that there's huge opportunity, particularly if you consider some of the markets that DB Cargo UK operates in. At the moment, that the likes of construction and intermodal, so intermodal being the movement of containerized goods from UK ports to inland distribution terminals. The market's soft. There's no two ways about it. The UK isn't building new houses. The construction market is very, very soft. The consumer isn't buying as much as that they used to. Therefore, that's affecting the intermodal market. But those are always circular. The markets will at some point bounce back. So certainly, if I talk to my aggregate customers, they're saying probably 2027. That's when they're predicting the construction market will complete its kind of circular softness and begin to bounce back. So there's that normal external market forces, but equally there's some big market changes, and again those driven by sustainability. So some of my largest customers in the metals market, for example, Tata Steel and British Steel, are both on a journey to become green steel producers, and because of that, a movement away from traditional raw materials, that being iron ore and coal, to in years to come moving to scrap. Now, the UK is a huge exporter of scrap. Some 8 to 10 million tons per annum of scrap gets exported from the UK. That volume can be internalized, and that can become a domestic consumer, where we see the scrap, rather than going out to the wider global market, is internalized, and customers such as Tata Steel and British Steel start to consume that because of the volumes involved, multiple million tons of scrap per annum between both customers. That is all new volume to rail. So again, with the start of the electric arc furnaces at both sides, that does present a very, very good opportunity for us. And of course, the sustainability piece, whilst it's no two ways about it, it is a challenge. Rail is very sustainable. Its carbon footprint is good. We often say that for every train moved, that's the equivalent of 127 HGVs on the UK roads. But that said, we can be complacent, right? Road is slowly catching rail up in terms of its environmental credentials, and we need to do more. And certainly at DB Cargo, we are doing more, and we are looking to see what else we can do.
Sorry for me to putting my penneth in, but I wonder how many lives you save a year.
Sorry, how many?
lives,
Oh,
127
yes, exactly. Yeah,
HGVs.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I think that's a amazing factor, really.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, Harry. If you think about how many freight trains not only DB Cargo
Yeah.
UK, but the UK rail freight industry as a whole moves, it's significant, absolutely significant.
So, Roger Neary, a great privilege to have you at the Intelligence Forum's Who Are You podcast. The subject so close to my heart. You've got no idea how happy this will make me. Thank you very has made me actually, and thank you very much indeed for it. May I wish you every success in the future, but fear not. I'm sure I'll be in touch to see if I can actually encourage you to speak again at some point. Thank you.
No, thank you. A pleasure, Harry, as always. Thank you.